So many persons seem to be so unhappy these days because they're primarily concerned with themselves and their families that they do not understand, I think in some cases even refuse to try to understand, that they will not find the happiness they are missing in life until they're ready to move the focus from themselves to others who are in need. I knew a lady whose life revolved around her husband and family. The couple doted on their 2 children, and in the process spoiled them rotten, so that the kids grew up expecting that the world owed them. Their son made an outrageous demand, which the couple simply could not provide, although I think that if they could, they would have. And because they couldn't give the boy what he wanted, he blamed them, and he broke off all contact with his parents. The daughter was in a car accident, and her face was slightly disfigured. She was so shallow, however, and selfish, that a year later she killed herself. She would rather be dead than go through life with a scar on her face. A couple years later, the husband died of a heart attack, and the woman was all alone. Oh, she became angry with God, stopped going to church. She more or less shut down and assumed a life of self-pity and despair. She had loving parents and siblings. She even had a few friends, but she shut them all out when they tried to get her to move on with her life. After a few years of self-pity, she herself realized that she could no longer endure this profound unhappiness, and it was her sister who pushed her to meet with the parish priest. She wasn't keen on meeting with a priest, but she did not have the money to see a therapist, so she met with the priest. She told her story, and it was a painful story, but the priest did not seem to feel badly for her. He didn't even tell her he was sorry for her many losses. Instead, he abruptly stood up and said that he had to go to his next appointment. She was flabbergasted. She said to herself, "No wonder he doesn't charge people. He's terrible at this." Grabbing a bag up in his arms, he handed it to the long-grieving woman and said, "Give me a hand, will you?" And before she knew what she was doing, she was following the priest across the parish campus. They entered an old school building, and the priest led her to a room with several Down syndrome children. The priest said, "I'm a little short-handed today, so if you'll take the 2 kids over there, I'd appreciate it." Before she knew what was happening, she was assisting in a catechism lesson for these very special children. At first, their acceptance and physical affection surprised her and made her feel a little uncomfortable. But their genuineness was so apparent, and her hunger for love was so strong that she willingly accepted their hugs and kisses. When the class was over, she helped the priest clean up, and when she said goodbye to the last child, she was smiling. The priest looked at her and announced that she had made good progress today on her grief, but it was just beginning. He would need to see her once a week for the next several months. He told her that he was confident that sooner than she would realize, she would be finding new meaning in her life. Each week she returned, and the priest shoved packages into her arms to carry to the room with the special children, where they would stay and help with each passing week. She felt her sadness ease, and she felt a quiet excitement begin to grow in her weekly meetings with the priest. The priest hardly ever asked her how she was doing, let alone give her any advice. After a few weeks of this, the priest announced that the children were not going to be there the next week. The woman blurted out, "Well, what are we going to do?" The priest said, "Now that you're feeling a little bit better about life, don't you think it's time you got right with God? When was the last time you went to confession?" She should have felt offended, maybe even manipulated, but there was something inside her that said yes. She had not been to the sacrament in years and had never gone face to face, but once she started, she poured out her heart, convicting herself of her failures and acknowledging her self-centeredness. Absolution was given, and she immediately felt lighter inside. That was really the first day of the rest of her life. The once depressed widow now heads the parish special education program, and she exudes joy. She's actually met a widower who she has been dating, and she has reconnected with most of her family and friends, as well as forming new relationships. Her life is much better. It's a mystery of life that when we forget about ourselves and our problems by helping someone else who's in need, then we discover joy. Because in loving the most vulnerable and the needy among us, we find good in the process. The one truth that everyone seems to agree on, from Moses through Jesus to Augustine to Pope Francis, is that it is virtually impossible to please God without loving our neighbors. A church sign read, "When God measures a person, he puts a tape measure around the heart." I think that's so true. A therapist once told me that she meets two kinds of people: the unhealthy ones who go through life crying, "Please love me, please love me." And the other group consists of people healthy enough to give love, not just receive it. She told me that the best cure for those who cry, please love me," is to help them to a place where they can give help and love to others. In giving love to others, we will automatically fill our own deeper needs for attention and love. We cannot truly love God unless we're willing to love our neighbor. When the Bible seeks to sum up God's character, it simply says God is love. Love is our primary responsibility as followers of Jesus Christ. Do we love like Christ? Who are we to love? In our next video, we'll attempt to answer those questions.